Hi, my name is William, and in this presentation, I will be discussing my research paper on the distributional impact of the UK carbon price floor. Climate change and inequality are two prevalent issues in today's world, and so exploring how they are interrelated is both relevant and important for future policies. Now I'll discuss a bit more about my research question. The carbon price floor, introduced in 2013, is a unique carbon pricing policy as it consists of both the EU emissions trading system and an additional tax on producers in certain sectors such as the electricity sector. Thus, there are cost pass-throughs from the policy onto household electricity bills. The core of my analysis is centered around whether the carbon price floor has exacerbated electricity consumption inequality between low and high-income households, which I call vertical inequality. I also explore horizontal inequality, which is how various household characteristics such as age and household size affect households' electricity expenditure within the same income bracket. I'll now move on to discuss the methodology I used to examine vertical inequality. Most of the previous literature on carbon pricing policies used the modeling approach. In this paper, I used the empirical approach by using the difference in difference method with data from the UK Living Costs and Food Survey. Coming up with a methodology for causal inference was challenging, as it was difficult to find an adequate control group since the carbon price floor is a nationwide policy. Dickens et al. And Stewart, in their studies on the UK minimum wage, used income earners 10 to 20% above the minimum wage as their control group, as they were less affected by the policy. Taking inspiration from this, I decided to run the difference in difference regression, where households in the lowest quintile are the treatment group, and households in the highest quintile are the control group, as they are less impacted by the carbon price floor. The reasoning behind this is that high-income households have more elastic price demand for electricity and generally have more energy-efficient houses, as evidenced by Schulter and Heindel and the English Housing Survey. Furthermore, Chitnis et al. Showed that the households in the lowest quintile see electricity as a necessity good, while households in the highest quintile see electricity as an inferior good. Thus, as income rises, richer households spend proportionally less on electricity. Therefore, any increase in electricity price is likely to affect the electricity bill of highest income households less, and their electricity expenditure remains relatively constant throughout the periods. Here I present my regression and output for the DID analysis. I use budget share and consumption share as my outcome variables in order to observe proportional changes spent on electricity. As observed by the DID coefficient, there is a statistically significant positive effect of the carbon price floor on consumption and budget share of households in the lowest quintile. Here I present the results in graphical form. We can see that the parallel trend assumption holds, which is fundamental for the DID regression, thereby justifying the choice of control group. Also, it is clear from the graph that the carbon price floor has widened the electricity inequality gap between income groups. I next explore the heterogeneity of electricity expenditure across households within the lowest quintile. Since the carbon price floor predominantly affects poorer households, any policy that aims to address the disproportionate budget share on low-income households also needs to take into account household characteristics such as age, household size, and employment status. In order to determine the relationship between electricity expenditure and these household characteristics, I use an OLS model with year fixed effects. The results show that electricity expenditure increases with household size and is higher for unemployed households. This makes sense as larger households and households where people spend more time at home consume more electricity. Also, there is a concave relationship between age and electricity expenditure. The graph shows that electricity expenditure peaks for households between the age of 30 and 49. This can be explained by the permanent income hypothesis, as households in the lowest quintile can be categorized as either temporarily poor or permanently poor. Households within the age of 30 and 49 can be thought of as temporarily poor, as they expect to maintain an income in the future, and hence can consume more electricity. Older households are permanently poor, and younger households are credit constrained, and hence consume less electricity. The main findings of my paper is that the carbon price floor disproportionately impacts poorer households. This also has implications for the recent cost of living and energy crisis. Policies such as energy rebates might help mitigate inequality across income groups. However, they must also consider horizontal inequality within poor households. With the rise of remote working, residential electricity consumption has vastly increased, which has consequences for discrepancies in energy expenditure across households. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my paper.